one of the things that I always try to look at when I'm thinking about how predictive is a statistic, I really care about how does this translate across teams, and how does this translate if I was to take those players that get like swapped or they're in completely new context, like how predictive is it? And something like loose puck recovery, like if you're on a good team, if you're on a bad team, if you're in NCAA, like whatever, you're in the NHL, like the guys that get a lot of value out of that, like it's extremely predictive. Somebody that's like incredible, like Celebrini. I was watching him in the whole like Olympics, and like I don't know how he does it. Like, he's not that much bigger than I am, and like he's just able to grab pucks and they're just on his stick, and like it's so valuable.